Hello, everyone, and welcome. Thank you all so much for joining us today for this live stream event. My name is Alexia, and I am the Project and Event Manager of the Microsoft Reactor Toronto. Before we begin, I'd like to quickly review two items with you, our Code of Conduct and Event Guidelines. First, please take a moment to review our Code of Conduct. Microsoft Reactor seeks to provide a respectful environment for both our audience and presenters. We do encourage engagement in the chat, but please be mindful of your commentary, remain professional and on topic. Secondly, our event guidelines. This session is being recorded and will be available on demand through our Microsoft Reactor YouTube channel in about 24 to 48 hours. If you've not been on a live stream through YouTube before, please note that you must create an account on YouTube in order to access and interact in the chat. You can set that up now. And if you're unable to use the chat but have questions, feel free to reach out to us on social media or on Meetup. Which brings us to today's session. I'm going to bring in our speakers here, Dave and Max, who is there also. Fantastic to have you back.
Hey, thanks for having us back.
For sure. That's great. We're on episode 3 of Enterprise DevOps. Super exciting. Max, I think you're muted, and I think
I'm sorry. Hi. Episode 2 technically, but okay.
That's right. We actually moved episode 1 from early April to second week of May. On May 12th, you can register for the session as it was rescheduled on our Meetup page. I'll be sharing the link a little later. But yeah, thanks again for being there with us. And yeah, take it away.
All right. So there we go. And there's our screen. Hey, everybody. Welcome to Azure DevOps Unleashed. This is my buddy, Max. You want to say hi, Max, and introduce yourself?
Hi, everybody. How's everyone?
Max is an Azure DevOps MVP and knows everything about DevOps. You're just going to smile at that. And I'm Dave Lloyd. I'm also a consultant at Object Sharp, same as Max, and Microsoft Azure DevOps MVP. Max and I spend a lot of our time working with DevOps tools like Azure DevOps and GitHub and GitHub Actions. And today we're going to take you on a bit of a tour of Azure DevOps. So sound good? We're going to walk through, there's kind of 5 parts of Azure DevOps: Azure Boards, Azure Test Plans, Pipelines, Repos, and Artifacts. And we've only got an hour, and it's a huge product. So we're really just going to scratch the surface, but hopefully we'll give you guys something to think about and look into for those that it's new to. But we're going to do it all. We've got some slides, but I think we're going to do it mostly through demo. It's a little more fun that way and get to see a little bit more. So I'm going to start us off, and I'm going to talk about Azure Boards and Test Plans, and then I'm going to hand it over to Max, and he's going to take the screen over and do Azure Pipelines and Repos, and we'll give you a really quick little what Azure Artifacts is all about. Sound good? Ready to go, Max?
Oh, yeah. And by the way, if you have any questions along the way, please type them in the chat, and we'll do our best to answer them right away, or we can take them after.
Absolutely. Yeah, so Max will watch the YouTube chat while I'm presenting, and then I'll watch the YouTube chat while he's presenting, and hopefully we can answer all your questions throughout the presentation. So, so first things first, like I said, we got a couple of slides, but we're not going to stay on these. Azure Boards, for those of you that aren't familiar with what this means, Azure Boards is the work management part of Azure DevOps. It's where we put our user stories or backlog items. And I'm going to flip right over to a demo. So here I am in Azure DevOps, and as you can see down the side of the side here, we've got all the different tenants that we talked about. There's boards, repos, pipelines, test plans, and artifacts. And I'm going to concentrate mostly on boards right now. So I've only got about 10 minutes to show you some stuff. So let's see if we can get some good info in here. So, so first of all, when you're in Azure DevOps, one of the things that you can set up is the concept of teams. So you can create a team and then put a bunch of members on the team and have a team administrator so that they can administer that team and make configuration changes that are specific to the team. And when you, right here is where you would pick. So you can see in mine, I've got a handful of teams. I've got an intake team and a London and a Toronto team and a Parts Unlimited team. So right now I'm just concentrating on the London team. And that's the team that I work with. That's the one that I want to see about. And once I pick that London team, Azure DevOps just kind of follows me around that way. It always will pick that team for me, whether I'm looking at boards or backlogs or sprints. So if you're somebody who needs to look across multiple teams because you're in charge of the scrum of scrums or whatever it happens to be, then you can easily flip between teams. But at the same time, if you're only ever concerned with this team, then all you can do is pick it and it'll stay that way. So this is my team's backlog. You can see these are all my stories that the team has on their backlog to do. There's a few bugs in here as well that we've been prioritizing that we want to get done. And one thing that's interesting about Azure DevOps is this is the granular work. So these are the things that we're going to pull into a sprint and get done and show our product owner and then push into production after we're done the sprint. Underneath those, we also have the concept of tasks. So we can break a story up into multiple tasks. So a story is something that a team takes on, but a task is something that an individual can do. So, whether that happens to be adding a column to a table in a database or adding a function to the back end or adding a new page to the UI, whatever it happens to be, you can break up your stories into tasks to better organize the work and dole it out across the team. We'll take a look at those in a little more detail in a minute. You've also got the concept of having a portfolio view. So as you can see up here, I can look at my backlog as stories, but I can also look at it from a feature level. So when I look at features, I can, a feature is essentially the product owner's view or the business's view. So the business might say, we need to ask for customer feedback. And that breaks down into a few stories that we need to implement to get that feature delivered. And you can see here, I can add in status bars that show me how far along we are on this feature. So it's essentially just doing a simple calculation that says how many of the stories that are assigned to this feature are completed and how many are left to be done. We can also bring this up another portfolio level to a thing called epics. And epics, same deal. I can see how far along I am on an epic. And the idea of an epic is a lot of times it's maybe related to a release. So these are all the features we're going to do in this release, or these features are all part of a project. So, maybe your company has agile teams, but it's not all that agile, or you're working your way towards it. You can still manage work at a project level or at a higher level than just the stories. And you can see here, there's always the view into the details. So I've got my epic, and this is completely configurable. I won't go into the details now, but just so you know, everything here that you're seeing is based on what's called a process template. And that process template, there are 4 that come with the product. A basic one that just has issues that looks kind of like a GitHub project. Very simple and straightforward. And then there's a CMMI, an Agile, and a Scrum. And of course, you can make a copy of any of those. You can clone it and change it and update it, add your own work items. You can add, I've seen customers that have different portfolio levels. They add initiatives, or maybe they take out epics and add something called projects. So very, very configurable and easy to change up and flip it around for your use. So that's my backlog. That backlog is also available as a board. So I've got a Kanban board here. This is completely customizable. So when you grab a Kanban board, I never know whether to say Kanban or Kanban, but anyway, I'll flip between them like I usually do. So as for this particular team, like if I switch over to the Toronto team, you can see the board is different, right? The board has different columns in it, and each team can have their own columns and can figure out, what kind of work in progress limits they have. What are the what do you need to close something off? What's your definition of done for each stage? And this is something that a team can change over time, right? You can start out with, maybe a whole bunch of different columns and a lot of different what they call board columns. And then, as you get better and better as a team working together, that might shrink down, and you can customize your board and change it to go with the team as it evolves. And as you go from sprint to sprint and work your way through the process. But so each of those stories that we saw in the backlog right here, so this is just a backlog list, right? A prioritized list of things that we want to work on. But when I go into the boards, now I can see them based on whether they're still sitting in the backlog. We can just tuck the backlog away for a minute. I can see things that are being defined or designed still. Things have been approved by the product owner to get done. So these can be dragged into the sprint at any time and worked on. Things that are under development, things that are being tested, stuff that's ready for review at the end of the sprint, and then things that we've done. So here we are in sprint 2. I'll talk about sprints in a second. So this is essentially the work that we're doing in sprint 2 that we've committed to. And this story just shows it's done and it's waiting for review. A couple other cool things that we can see in here. I can see the tasks underneath. I can see which ones have been completed and which ones are not done yet. I can see test cases, and I'm going to talk about test plans in a minute, so I'll come back to that. But we can actually look at this story and see that it's being tested right now by someone, and they had 2 test cases that they were going to run or execute to validate the story. And one of them is failing and one of them is passing. So we get an idea of where we are with regards to testing these as well. Here's one with 5 test cases on it, 4 of which are passing, or 3 of which are passing, 1 is failing, and 1 hasn't been run yet. So it kind of gives us a really nice quick view into everything that's going on around a particular story. And the stories can actually be tied into our pipelines and show up in builds and in releases. And I won't steal Max's thunder. I'll let him talk about that kind of stuff. So that's our board. Kind of if you're a Kanban team, then maybe this is all you're using, this in your backlog. But if you're a Scrum team and you're doing sprints, then you're probably going to set up sprints. So here's my sprint backlog. So here's all the things that we committed to doing this sprint. You can see up here at the top, there's my sprint, started April 18th. It'll finish April 29th, 7 working days remaining. It's sprint 2 we're in. I can actually flip and look at, past sprints or future sprints and see what we're planning to do in those. This is my backlog. So here's my stories, and here's my tasks underneath. And then, of course, I have a task board in here. So down one side, you can see all the stories that I'm working on. And then on the task board, let me just tuck this away for 1 minute, and I'll come back to that and show you what that's all about. Doesn't want to go away. Oh, there we go. Oh yeah, they changed the UI a little bit on this. These are the tasks that are assigned to the stories. I can see who they're assigned to. This is, if you're a Scrum team, this is an awesome place to go at stand-up, is, bring this up with everybody. Everybody talks about, what they've completed, what they're working on, what they've got coming next. So, during stand-up, it's really all about, do I have any impediments? What did I work on yesterday? What am I working on today? And you can see the things, the tasks that they have currently in play right now. And you can quickly change things here. So, I could say, well, I've only got about 10 hours left on that. So I'll just switch that right here during sprint. Or maybe, we say, oh, Dan's overbooked. So we're going to switch that out, and I'm going to give it to Dave's going to take that one on instead. And you can flip things around on the fly. You can actually customize these. You can show all kinds of data on the tiles, on the task tiles, and on the story and bug tiles. some people might be thinking, what's a bug doing in there? Well, one of the things that you can customize is how you manage bugs. So if you look down here, see in the customizations, you just zoom in on it, you can decide as a team how you want to work with bugs. So right now I'm set up to treat bugs like requirements. So when a bug happens and somebody adds a bug to the system, we put it into the backlog and let our product owner decide, is this more important than the features that are ahead of it? Or does this need to be bumped up the board and be done quickly and easily? Other teams would rather deal with them as tasks. So the bugs would show up over here and we would just treat them like tasks. And then of course, other teams turn both of those things off and use this option and just handle bugs using work item queries instead. And the nice thing is this is totally up to your team. You customize the boards the way you want to work, and you can do that yourself as a team administrator. One of the things I'll just quickly show here, you can see I just assigned that to me, and now if you look, I've gone red. So this is a work details board, and if you're using capacity planning in the sprint to see how we're to kind of show people, give visibility into how we're doing on the sprint, it can calculate that information for you. So if I reassign that back to the original developer, see, unfortunately, I'm still over and Dan's over as well. So giving it to us was not a great idea. So we might want to actually assign that to somebody else. We'll assign that to Blair, and now Blair's over. So, but you get the idea. Is as we go through the sprint, this chart will show me how much capacity my team has to finish all the tasks that we've assigned to the stories, and also individually what kind of capacity we have. So, I mean, if we look here, the team itself has the capacity to finish what we have, but Dave and Blair are both going to be in some trouble. So we're going to have to probably get the other two guys on the team to pick up some of this work. And that's all done through this capacity planner, right? You take your team members, you set up what capacity per day they can work on sprint work. You notice this isn't 8 hours a day. You would never do that because people have meetings, and you might want to go to a seminar by Max and Dave and learn about Azure DevOps or something. So to learn things, so you just got to set it to a reasonable number. And then the other thing in here is that all these work items are in the system. Now, when we look at boards and backlogs, think of this as just a tool, right? This is a tool that shows me all my all the work items or all the stories that are assigned to this team. And of course, I get to see, I can do things like show their parents and get to see the full thing, right? Get to see the epic and the feature and all that kind of stuff. But sometimes you just need to go out and look for information. I might be a manager or somebody who's trying to find out, how many bugs have we had in the last 6 months across all the teams relating to a particular project or an area of the code. Maybe there's something that's always cropping up on us and causing us issues. And you've got work item queries for that. And this is a super powerful tool. You can go into here. It's kind of an access-like engine, so I can look for work item types that are product backlog items that are in the state closed, maybe. And maybe I always want to see ones that were closed by me, right? And you got some macros in here that you can use. I can run the queries. I get nothing for that. Let's go. There we go. Well, at least I got something back. So, I can build up a query, and then I can save that query for other people to use and run. Or I can go and create charts off of that query. So I can go into here and create a new, I haven't saved it, and create a new chart. I'm going to show you some actually. And I can create a chart that we can use to give us sort of up-to-date information on what's going on the project. And if you go over to overview, you'll see there's dashboards. Max, hopefully you're watching my time and you can let me know when I'm when I'm running out of time here. So
You're about 3 minutes over.
well, I'm going to do test plans too, so
Exactly.
I can, and it'll be quicker. So here's a little dashboard, and this is a bunch of charts and information about each of my teams. There's my Toronto team, my London team. I got burn down charts for both of them. I can see information about what's going on in their sprints. I can start to track their velocity. I got a cumulative flow chart for each one. And then I've got other things, like I've got a bug tracking dashboard. So every one of these charts is built on a work item query, like I was talking about. So you can see, for sprint 2, I've got test results. So there are 22 test cases being executed. And this not counting my build and release tests, my unit tests that I can tell in my build pipeline, whether they're running, and my integration tests that are running in my release pipeline. These are actual manual tests that I'm executing outside of the pipelines. And it's just showing me I got 28 tests, 15 of them are passing, 6 of them haven't been run yet, 6 are failing, and 1 is blocked by something. So it just gives me that really quick visibility into what's going on in my world. Test results by test suite, results by the tester, results by test configuration, right? Here's my bugs by priority, by severity, by test configuration. And then things like, how many bugs do I have right now? How many of them are critical? How many of them are older than 60 days? How many impediments do we have at the moment? And these are just super quick tiles that gives me a place to come as maybe the Scrum Master or a team member or a product owner, and just get an idea of how we're doing right now. What kinds of things should I be looking at or working on? The tiles can be set up to change color based on the result in it. So these ones, these ones are blue, and these ones are all red, and they would be green if that was a 0. So I can come here quickly and everything's green. I can just walk away. I know that I'm good to go. But as soon as I start seeing some red stuff, I know there's something we need to look at. So there's a really quick kind of view of boards. So let me just talk really quickly about test plans. So test plans are manual. These are manual test plans. This is an absolutely awesome tool, oddly gaining popularity in Azure DevOps. A lot of people are using it. I say oddly just because it went for a long time, and I don't think anybody knew it was here. It just wasn't used that much. But people are using it more and more, and it's really a great product. So if you imagine for a minute, I don't have a lot of time to show you, but I'll give you an idea. So I'm responsible for quality assurance on the team. So for Sprint 2, so this is my Sprint 2 test plan. And it includes, so these are stories. So I can actually come into here and I can add a test suite as a requirement. So what I did was I just came to here and said, oh, find me all my test plans for iteration plan Sprint 2. And it'll bring back all the stories that we said we would do in Sprint 2. And then I added them in as test suites. And then each one of them comes with whatever test cases were attached to the story. So the test case is attached to the story to say this story is tested by this test case. And each of these are brought into the test plan automatically. This regression one, what I'm doing with this is a query-based suite, and all of these test cases, I've defined them with a tag on them that says these are regression tests. These are things that I want to run at the end in every sprint. They're manual things that don't get covered off by my automated testing, and I need to make sure that I'm covering it off. And so I just tag them with the word regression, and this query-based test suite automatically pulls them into my test plan for me. So here, I got design, execute. I've got charts in here as well, and the charts that are in here are the ones that we saw on the dashboard a minute ago, right? I can add all kinds of charts for different things about my test progress. So I can define it. I need a special license for this. So you need a test plan license if you're going to create test plans. But to execute them, you just need a basic license. And when I go to execute them, I can come in here and I can execute these in a really simple way. See, I can just say I'm going to run these tests. I can just come in here and set them to pass or fail if I already ran it, or I can run them through this little test runner that I've got, and it just exposes to me all the test cases I picked. Some of them have multiple iterations. I won't get into that, but you should look into it. It's very useful. And then I can come into here and say, oh, that guy passed. So let's move on to the next one. There's the next iteration. Passed. So maybe that one failed. I can put in some extra information. I can create a video of what happened. I can create a screenshot of what I'm seeing when I did my test. I can create a bug from here. And when you create a bug, you'll see the test to reproduce gets filled in with all the steps from the test case. So you don't have to explain what it was you were doing when you were writing the test. It just fills it in. And it will actually, we're just going to get out of this a minute. It will also, when you create that bug, it'll attach the story that I was testing at the time to the bug. So I know that this bug was found when testing this story. And then I can easily turn those steps into a test case. And so I know to run them every time if it was something I was just doing ad hoc. There's a progress report, which is fantastic. So this lets me pick. You can see I can have multiple test plans going on at a time. Maybe I've got 4 different teams all running sprint 2 at the same time, and I can pick all their test plans and get a kind of a synopsis or an idea of exactly what is going on, how many are passing, how many are failing, how many are blocked. There's so much more. I can set up parameters for my test cases. I can set up multiple configurations. I can go back and look at each of my test runs and report on those. Just a very, very cool, useful tool. So that's boards. That's test plans, a really quick view of things. I'm going to hand it over to Max now, so he's got some time to talk about Azure Repos and pipelines.
Sorry, let me unmute myself. Hi, everybody. Let me share my screen. Share screen. Easiest way to do it. All right. Can you see my screen?
It's a coming. There we go. Oh,
all right.
Lost it.
I'm sorry?
No, we got it.
Oh, this is how it's done. Okay, hold on. So it's actually sharing the page. Well, that's okay. How do I do that now? Okay, let me do this. Give me a second. Let me share screen. Yeah, sure, done. Show me. Oh, I want to see this one. All right, can you see the screen now?
Nope. Yep, coming. It's just taking a little delay for us.
No problem. Let me know when it comes up. While we wait, any questions about what Dave showed? Boards, dashboards, test plans. Any questions so far? If you do, just type them in the chat. Can you see my screen, or is it still coming up?
No, we're not seeing it, Max.
Let me try again. No, I'm sorry. Share screen. This is the window I want to show. Yes, please. Come on, you can do it. There you are.
We can see it.
All right. So hi, everybody. Again, we're here to talk about the Azure DevOps, and I'm going to talk about Azure Repos. So Azure Repos is a vertical. It's a service inside Azure DevOps that allows you to do the source code management, your version control. So Azure DevOps supports 2 types of source control. It supports the its own native, classic, old, let's just say, legacy source control called TFVC, Team Foundation Version Control. That's the centralized source control system. That's the one that looks like this. So demos, for example, that's the one that, again, you have to you can check out the latest revisions or specific version. It's centralized. If you have to check it out. You have to make the changes and commit back to the server for the things to be available, and so on and so forth. Again, it's centralized. It works. It's great. It's very different from Git, right? So if you are still using TFAC, I suggest, again, if you need to use it, but I suggest you try to migrate to Git, because all the latest, greatest features that are coming in Azure DevOps, they are tied to Git, right? Again, TFAC works, it's great, it's supported, it just doesn't get all the new bells and whistles. All right, so in this case, again, this is TFAC, and again, you can, in TFAC, they have change sets like commits and Git. You have shell sets, it's like stash and Git. I'm not going to focus a lot on the TFAC because it's legacy. And you, in addition to one central TFAC repo in your team project, you can have as many as you want or as many as you need Git repos. So in this case, I have a Git repo called demos, right? So this Git repo, I can clone it. If I click clone, I can get the HTTPS or SSH URL. I can directly open it in Visual Studio. I can, again, just like any other Git repo, I can go ahead, again, look at the history. I can switch between the branches and so on and so forth, right? I can also go ahead and look at that. Again, it's a typical source control. So I look at my commits, look at my pushes, look at my branches. In the branches, what I can do is I can lock the branch. I can also set up a branch policy. And also, by the way, I can set up branch in TFAC. I can set up permissions pretty much on anything up to a file, right? In Git, I can set up permissions on the branch. I think that's the lowest level we can go. So, but the branch policy, what it allows me to configure in Git, saying, you know what, in order for the changes to end up in the master or develop or whatever my protected branch is, users have to go through a pull request code review process, right? So in this case, I can configure, turn on the code review, say, you know what, at least one peer review has to happen. Developers are not allowed to review their own changes. Obviously, you can then prohibit the most recent pusher from approving their own changes. Again, the same similar idea. After completion, even if some reviews vote, and again, there's a lot of options. The things that I wanted to show you is, again, I think this is important, saying as soon as there's a new push, make sure that you reset the votes in your PR. So if somebody approved the change in the pull request, and somebody else is going to go ahead and push another commit into that branch, into that pull request, and you know what, I want to reset my votes, right? I want to make sure that, you know what, you cannot use my vote for the changes that I haven't seen. You can enable a link to the work item. So this is you can link to the boards that they were showing, right? So this is, if you turn it on, then you're basically saying every commit that you're making has to be associated with the recorded piece of work, right? You cannot just randomly push changes into the branches. And it's very, very handy, I think. And it comes out of the box. You can make it also optional if you want to. If you don't want to enforce it, you can, and you should, enable the comment resolution. I think when somebody comments, you want to make sure that the comment was seen and addressed. And you can also, if you want to, you can limit the merge types. So for example, maybe on your develop branch, you want to enable, and what I want to squash all the changes in develop. But when it comes to master, I want to, you know what, I don't want to squash. When it comes to pull requests into master, I want to enable only basic merge, because I want to keep all the history. I don't want to merge the history, merge commits between the developer and the master. There's a lot of options that you can do. You can enable the builds, or pick the builds that you want. You can, again, say this is required, the build is required, and it has to pass. And you can also make sure that, you know what, if the build was run for more than, if the build run is more than 12 hours old, go ahead and, you know what, that's not valid anymore. you have to run it again. You can also set it to not expire, set up some display messages. You can enable status checks. So this is where you can make a REST API call that's going to REST API call to a third party and check something else, right? This is nice. GitHub took it to the next level, and again, we'll talk more about this GitHub at one of our next talks. But again, this feature is also enabled in Azure DevOps. It's just it's not as user-friendly as it is in GitHub. And one of my favorite options is I can enable I can configure my branch policy in such a way that when somebody modifies certain file types, any YAML, DevOps or some code review people, I'm sorry, the DevOps people or my tech architects or somebody, certain group of people, certain users has to look at those changes. I can create, I can use regex here. I can be as creative as I want to be. It allows me to split the pull requests. And for example, if somebody made the changes to a number of files, but some of the files has to be reviewed by team A, and another set of files has to be reviewed by team B, and everything else has to be reviewed by, I don't know, developers in general, right? And I can specify how many of those approvers do I need for every type. And I can also say, you know what, when somebody updates the YAML file, they can approve it themselves. So this is the branch policy. I find this user interface, again, very clean, very nice, very easy to use. So in my pull request, the tags are tags, again. In my pull request, I can see my completed, again, I can see everything that's going on. I can create my pull request and get people to review them. All the history, everything, all the things are linked are here. It's Git. Very handy, very nice, very clean interface, very easy to navigate. And it's very powerful, right? So that's Azure Repos. If you have any questions, please put them in the chat about Azure Repos. Again, Azure Repos, we have TFVC and we have Git repos. And again, people still use TFVC a lot. There's also, again, nowadays more and more people use Git. And again, Git and GitHub, Git here, it's just Git.
TFVC is.
Dave, did you want to say something?
I'm just saying TFVC is like I said, it's legacy. It's on its way out. I'd say the majority is Git. Azure Repos does a great job of implementing Git.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, I mean GitHub, is fantastic too. But without getting into too much detail on it, and you kind of alluded to it, but if you're using Azure DevOps for pipelines and test plans, et cetera, and work items, but you don't want to use Azure Repos, you could easily hook GitHub into it and use the rest of the tools. Yeah, super easy.
Again, the beauty of Azure DevOps is that it has a lot of things in it, practically anything you want, but also if you want to use something else, the integration pieces are very easy to do. So you can hook up another source control system into it, like SVN. You can connect to, again, other elements of it as well. All right, let's move on to Azure Pipelines. So Azure Pipelines, this blue rocket icon. So in Azure Pipelines, and right now the UI, if I go for the UI, for example, there's Azure Pipelines. That's the new YAML-based. And when I say new, it's what, 2 or 3 years now, Dave, that YAML has been around in Azure DevOps?
Yeah.
So this is now like the current pipelines in Azure Pipelines. It's YAML-based pipelines, and I'll get to them in a second. We have environments that you can configure, and environments you can configure. Again, in each environment, you can say, here's you can see all my deployment history, for example. I can also say, I can add resources, I can add security, who can actually use that environment in their pipelines. I can configure approvals and checks. And in this case, I can say, you know what, somebody has to look at my, when I deploy to prod, somebody has to approve it. I can also say that, I don't know how those people ended up in there, but that's cool. That's probably from way before. I can also say, you know what, all of the allow approvers to approve their own changes. I can set up the expiration. I can, so this is just typical approval process, right? I can go ahead also to set up additional checks. So I can set up the branch control on my environment. Say when somebody tries to deploy to my to production, the artifact has to come from master, right? Or the artifact has to come from main, or the artifact has to come from release branch. Whatever the regex I want to configure, I can set up the business hours when things are allowed to be deployed to that environment. Again, to minimize the downtime, I can evaluate the artifact. This is actually really cool. You can check if you're deploying containers. You can say, you know what, the container has to come from an approved registry. There's a lot. This is really cool. There's a lot of things in it, right? And you can define the templates that you want, right? It's a lot of really the whitelist, the forbidden ports. There's a Azure pipeline build images. There's a lot of really again a lot of this really cool stuff. What I wanted to show you next is again that you can make sure that you can limit access to this resource. So only one thing can be deployed at the to the environment. I'm sorry, one deployment can happen at any given time to that environment. You can invoke the webhook calls or the Azure functions. This is actually, so you can say things like when somebody tries to deploy to production or pre-production or whatever, go ahead and make a call to the ServiceNow, for example, and check for things that I want to make sure in ServiceNow have been done, right? So, or other third party that I can go ahead and hook it up to. Similar, again, I can use the Azure function for this. I can use the REST API call for this. I can also, and this is really cool, I can also set up in such a way saying that, you know what, when something gets deployed to production, go ahead and test it for continuously for 5 seconds, or 5 minutes, right? And if I get more than X number of percentage of failures, fail the deployment. So I can set up that gate of continuous monitoring for a certain number of given of time. And again, as a part of my built-in pipeline, I can again require the templates that people have to use in the corporate world, especially important. So you cannot deploy to production if you're not using one of the approved YAML templates, for example. Again, very handy. So again, the Azure pipelines allows you to be very flexible, allows the engineering to be very flexible, and gives a lot of hands a lot of power in their hands. But again, it also allows you to control again at the gates what's going on. So environments, releases. I don't want to talk about this a lot because this is called now classic releases or GUI-based releases. It's great, it's powerful, the legacy, right? The classic. You can use them. You can do practically everything from those releases, classic releases in YAML nowadays. So might as well just use YAML because it's, again, it's newer. It has more bells and whistles now. It's just better. The library, another thing I wanted to point out before I get into the pipeline. So in Azure Pipelines, I have, how am I doing on time? 7 minutes? Okay. All right. Variable groups. I can configure different subsets of variables that I can link to a specific environment. So I can say, here's my configuration for dev. Here's my configuration for prod. Here's my common configuration. I can link them to the environment. And again, it allows me to separate the configuration from the pipeline. It's very handy. I can set up permissions on it. I can do a lot of things in it. I can also store secure files, so certificates, again, keys and whatnot, right? Any kind of secure files, I can store it here, and I can download it at the pipeline on the fly and use it, and again, and then delete it from the agent. Again, very handy. I can also configure security on all those secrets. Again, very cool. If I don't want to use any of this, I can use Azure Key Vault, HashiCorp, Key Vault, your choice, right? So task groups, I'm not going to talk about it because it's the again, it's the thing that's used in the classic releases, and it allows you to combine certain tasks into the task groups. Certain tasks that you use a lot together, you can group in the task group and then use that task group. Again, it's very handy. It's part of the classic releases, part of the legacy. Don't want to talk about it. Deployment groups, very similar. It's very again, it's used in the classic releases, and it's very similar to environments in YAML. All right, let's dig into the pipelines. So in the pipelines, I have here like a classic build. Just to show you, if I go to edit, this is my classic build. Come on, you can do it. So this is classic. This is UI, right? So it's going to go ahead and again, build me .NET app. Since this is classic, let's talk about the cool stuff. So I also have this a build, like the new build. That's not UI. That's YAML based, right? So in this case, I have this again. I'm building a .NET application. I can go ahead and I can use this assistant to pick the task that I want. Again, the search is very let's just say file, right? Or I don't know. Maybe there's a lot of really useful tasks. I can use this task, configure the way I want to, and insert it into my pipeline. I can also, once it's inserted, I can go ahead and click on settings and go back to the UI if I'm not comfortable with YAML. But again, you can also stay in YAML. You can again configure the pipeline any way you see fit. An example of my build, my deployment I want to show is, so in this case, I have the deployment pipeline. It's called multistage pipeline. So what it does is, if the artifact was deployed from the feature branch, then it's going to be deployed to my development. Or it's only going to be built, right? For example, if the artifact was built from develop branch, and again, I can configure all that logic inside my pipeline. If I'm trying to deploy the artifact from develop, it's only going to be built, and then it's going to get deployed to dev and my QA. It cannot go to UAT or prod or staging or prod, right? Because I'm not allowing artifacts from develop branch in my managed environments, let's call them. And if artifact was built, once the code is merged into master, it's going to be built again, and now it can be built. And I can skip the QA and dev because I already deployed them. That code was already run. I can skip them automatically, and I can deploy the staging and prod directly. So if I go to any of those, for example, right? So again, it shows me the live history, shows me all the environments, everything that's happening, all of my associated pipelines, the builds, and like this, again, it shows you the nice UI. It's all better when you run it. It shows you the live log, so you know exactly what's going on. It shows you any artifacts that you consumed, that you publish as a part of your build, or that you consumed as a part of the build. So in this case, my consumed is actually, I'm using a template, a YAML template that is stored. If I click on it, that is actually in a different project called Ops that is managed by my DevOps team, and they're configuring. So if I go here again, they are configuring like my templates, and then I'm just consuming them as a user. Like I know I want to build Maven, I just kind of insert that YAML, right, and so on and so forth. There's a lot. I can build my ecosystem of the pipeline elements, and I can make them available to engineering to use. And engineering has the power to build their own pipelines, and I have again, we're still controlling on how like, what's the word, how the steps are actually being run or built. All right, so that's that's the pipelines. If I go back to my pipelines, what else did I want to show you? So this is my multi-stage. Again, this is YAML based. If I want to show you just a regular one, and that will be like this all in one, right? Saying, I can build it this way. What is this? This is, again, I can build all of this inside one. I can have a pipeline that's going to be deployed to dev, QA, and prod, staging and prod. I can skip environments on the fly. I can be as creative as I want to be. So if I go back to my pipelines, I can configure them as creative as I want to be. There's a lot of conditions. If you go to Azure DevOps YAML, you can the documentation is actually really, really good. It will be very detailed with examples and whatnot. And there's a lot of community knowledge out there. So there's a lot of it's heavily used, and it's been very popular for many years. So it's solid, it's mature. That's what I like about the Azure pipelines, right? It's not only good on CI, it's also good on CD and release management, and it's just, again, it's a great deployment tool for the enterprise. I am at the 150. Do we have any questions? Where can we store the artifacts? Beautiful. So the artifacts, I can store them inside Azure DevOps as an artifact. So in this case, I have an artifact that is being, so if I go here, I have the stuff that I publish, for example. Oops, I can't type. Publish artifacts. So again, I can store the artifacts. I'm sorry, if I go back here and go to my artifacts, I can store the artifacts inside the pipeline itself. So when inside the pipeline run as a part of the artifact. So in this case, I have my build is generating a package, and I'm storing it as an artifact inside this pipeline run. This is immutable. Nobody can modify it. It's untouchable, right? People can download it, but they cannot mess with it, which is beautiful. I can also store it. I can push it into network storage if I want to. Again, you don't do that anymore because people can mess with it. But again, if it's inside Azure pipelines as an artifact, then you can just again, it's immutable. You can still download it. You can use it. You can view it, and so on. You can also push into the Azure Artifacts, and we'll talk about that in a second. Azure Artifacts, you can store, again, if you're building like libraries, like NPM libraries, jars, and so on, or if you want to store a zip file, you can store them inside the Azure Artifacts as an artifact, right? Okay, another question I have. How can we take care of the promoting same build at the different environments? Like we created the build that is quantified in dev and moved to QA and so on and so forth. So this is actually the example, right? So like in this case, I can configure my builds. In this case, specifically to say, you know what, in order for the build to make it to it has to be first to deploy to dev, then it has to be deployed to QA. I can configure my pipelines in such a way that it has to be then deployed to staging and then prod, right? I just wanted to show you the that I can direct the traffic as I see fit. So saying, you know what, develop artifacts from develop branch, they have to be deployed to dev and QA. Once it's merged, it has to be deployed to prod, staging before it gets to prod. So I am in full control of the what's the promotion looks like. And in addition to that, I can define different checks on environments. I can define approvals and whatnot. There's a lot of really, really cool things that I can do inside Azure pipelines to ensure that my artifact follows the promotion path that it's been designated. Hopefully that answers the question. All right. Let's move to Azure Artifacts. So this should be quick. So Azure Artifacts allows me, I don't really have a demo for this, but Azure Artifacts allows me to configure organization level feeds or project level feeds, and the feeds could be my NPM feed, my again .NET NuGet feeds, it could be my Maven, it could be my Python packages, or universal packages, which is a zip file. So I can configure feeds, which basically can keep the version control and whatnot on the packages, and I can consume them in the pipeline. So an example, the good usage will be, I have a team that's generating some kind of a core library. So they can have the pipelines that's going to go ahead, and once they develop the pipeline, once they develop that library, it's going to push the version into the feed. And my other applications that are consuming this library, they can just take it from this feed, right? So they can just take the latest from this feed or the version that they see fit, right? That way I can split up that, isolate those pieces, right? Again, the registry feeds, again, the NPM, Maven, jars, Python, universal, NuGet, I can be very secure. I can configure as a very granular permissions, who is allowed to touch what. I can use like a pre-releases of the versions. There's a lot of really sophisticated stuff in it. I think the one thing that it doesn't have, that I wish it had, is the container support. So, but everything else, all the other major package types are supported in Azure Feeds. And again, it's there. You get some free usage based on consumption, which is mostly enough for everybody. If you use it a lot, then you pay for consumption. There's like a few bucks for every 10 gigabytes of downloaded packages and whatnot. You can get all the billing information if you want to, right from Azure DevOps.
The other nice thing is you can set up upstream feeds.
Oh yeah,
so
yeah, that's good.
Yeah, that's great. So you got one feed. You set up your feed and tell it to have an upstream feed that's like NuGet.org or whatever it happens to be, and you got one feed for all your apps. It's great.
Exactly. The first time it's going to go get it from the upstream, and then it's going to be cached in your registry, and you can, again, the next time it's going to get from your registry, so it's way faster because it's closer and it doesn't depend on so much on the third party anymore. Yep. All right. Any questions? And we can talk a lot about it, right? We just wanted to quickly go through the Azure DevOps verticals or services, and give you a quick intro and show you some of the code features in Azure DevOps. There's a lot more we can talk about the boards, for sure. We can talk way more about the pipelines. Azure Repos, not so much, because Git is Git, right? It's very easy, very handy. There's a lot of things you can do in it, but again, ultimately, it's very, it's just a common knowledge. Azure Artifacts, similar, right? Feed is a feed, but pipelines and boards, for sure.
Yeah, and test plans. Not everybody.
Yeah.
Yeah. For some people, Git is new, and so is understanding how to use an artifact feed. They pointed their app at NuGet.org or at NPM, and having their own feed isn't something that they've tried before. So,
another thing I wanted to point out is the search. You can search across. So I don't know what I should search for. Package and I don't know, something. Oh, that's because I'm looking at this project. So I can say, you know what? Go ahead and look at the. No, I'm not looking at this project. Actually, I am. So I can go ahead and say, go to my org and say, I want to search for file. And I can use all kinds of, what's the word, keys. So I can search for file. It's going to search directly in my repo. I can say, you know what, go ahead and only search this one. And I can add additional stuff in it, right? So I can create a very rich, again, search. It's going to search across the code. It's going to search across the work items. And the wiki, and we haven't even showed you the wiki. And the wiki feature in Azure DevOps is beautiful. You can also search across the packages. There's a lot of really, really cool things that you can do for the search. All right. I can talk about this a lot more. We only have 2 minutes left.
I think we're at
if you have
time.
Any questions? I'm happy to take them. Could you tell us what are the application configuration files and how can you maintain configuration files, prod environment, and so on and so forth? It's an excellent question. So usually you separate your configuration from your code. So you never store configuration values inside the source code. Usually you build once and deploy as many times as you want, and you apply the necessary configuration on the fly. This is where this, just as an example, right? This is where this variables and the, so if I go to my library, this is where my variables, I can use some as an example, right? This is my dev variables. This is my prod versus this is my QA variables, right? And I can apply it on the fly. So I can say whenever same deployment steps are happening to dev, I'm going to run the deployment steps, and I'm going to go ahead and apply my dev configuration on the fly. Again, token replacements and whatever. There's a lot of ways how you can actually get this done. But the key there is separate configuration values from the code and store it separately in the Azure DevOps or Key Vaults or anywhere you want. Okay. And definitely don't commit configuration values, environment-specific configuration values in your code, or definitely don't commit secrets. All right. Hopefully that helps, answers your questions. Ian. We are almost at time.
Yeah.
If you have any questions, follow-up questions, if there's anything else you can need help with or have questions on Azure DevOps, GitHub, DevOps in general in enterprise, please feel free to reach out to myself or Dave. Look us up on the intranets, and I'm sure you'll find us, and we'll be happy to help.
Yeah, check Medium. Both of us write articles on Medium all the time, so.
Yeah.
Yep.
There's one more question, and we're at the time, so I'm not sure if I should take it. But if we have to fix an issue in prod, how can we isolate? That's a lot of ways you can get it done. This is on case by case basis, but there's a lot of tools at your disposal to get this done. Again, feel free to ping us on Twitter or some other way. Send us an email. We'll see how we can help.
Thanks, everybody.
Thank you all.
Have a great day.
Thanks. Bye.